Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, Central British Columbia. It's a beautiful summer day. There have been a fair amount of forest fires, not today, so those that look behind me can see the city of Prince George. And today we have a very, very interesting guest, Nicolette Tuftin.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Nicolette.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you. And tell us a little bit about you. You are originally from
California.
California.
Yes.
And you came to Prince George. Usually it is the other way around. People from here go to either Arizona or California.
I mean, I'll tell you, since living through 3 winters now, I very much would like to live the snowbird lifestyle that Canadians do. But
yeah,
I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
And I've lived all over California.
It's beautiful though. Yeah.
It's lovely and stunning. The whole state is beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found myself moving further and further south. The last place I got was San Diego, which is about as far as you can go.
I love San Diego because the climate, relatively speaking, mild. Even now, we were kind of looking at it over the weekend, and mid-20s, high 20s, not like Arizona where it is 40 plus, or so same actually with San Francisco, relatively mild.
I used to think that I speak Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
I used to think that winters in California were chilly. We would bundle up in our sweaters and scarves and all of the things. And now when I go back to visit in the wintertime, I'm like in t-shirts and super warm.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Holland, and the winters there, relatively speaking, were mild, very much like Vancouver.
Yeah.
That area, and and so when I came here in 1965, it was a whole new experience, and by then it was much colder than it is now. It would be not uncommon to say it would be minus 40 below, and then I went all the way up to the Yukon Territory, which for those international listeners, Prince George is about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 750 kilometers, about that. And then, but Prince George is only the middle of the province, exactly the middle of the province. There's another 750 kilometers or 500 miles north until we get to the Yukon border, which is next to Alaska. So the coldest that I've seen there was 62 below.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I said, So, and it snows in July, so you don't know if it is late or early. And, so one of those situations. I was there for about 5 years. And anyway, so so you grew up in the San Francisco Valley area?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I grew up near San Francisco, about like 45 minutes outside in a really small town.
To the south?
To the east.
Okay.
East Bay. And we had one middle school, one high school. Everybody knew each other. It was very small, but then surrounding would be all of the big cities like San Francisco and Oakland. There was a lot to do around, but the town I grew up in was very small.
Silicon Valley, not too far away.
Yeah, that's down to the south. I actually went to university at UC Santa Cruz, which is part of that area. Yeah.
And that has kind of become big and huge, right? Everything kind of became bigger and bigger and all kind of together.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people who grew up in California, they are leaving, and a lot of people are coming to California. It's kind of a...
So what seems to be the trend? I hear a lot about, it's always amazing to my friends in the United States. I'm also in the lumber business, and we do a lot of business with the United States market. And so I've always been very involved in politics in the United States and all the other things that are going on, because it directly and indirectly affects us as being part of North America. But the other one is part of my business, obviously, and so watching immigration, especially from the South and the United States, somewhat controversial, and but at the same time, no different than it is here, especially post the COVID-19. Labor or employees for all levels are very, very difficult to find.
Yeah. Here
as well, and in BC and in Canada, and obviously the same in the States.
And at all the airports.
Yeah.
Not enough people at the airport.
Yeah. Here, so I flew in on Monday actually from Victoria, and they had only one line for security, so everybody was very backed up, and that's relatively easy. If you go to some of the other airports, much more difficult, much more complicated.
Yeah.
So you got your training in the San Francisco or south of there. So tell me a little bit about your background, because you have a very, very interesting background. And
yes, I kind of am I call myself a Renaissance woman.
Okay, what does that mean?
I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the person who likes to learn how to do a thing and then wants to do it always and for everybody.
Right.
So, I actually found myself in college in 2014. I had a total breakdown. I was studying global economics. I was going to study Mandarin. I had straight A's. I've always had straight A's. I've always been the girl who's got it all together and it's all perfect, and I've got the stamp of approval from my parents and everybody else. And in 2014, I was crying on my dorm room floor going, what am I doing? Like, why am I trying to do all of these things that don't light me up, that maybe look good on paper to some people that I'm trying to impress? I don't even know who those people are anymore. Yeah. And I said, I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it all. And so I did a yoga teacher training and became a yoga teacher. I changed my major. I changed it. I looked through the course syllabus at UC Santa Cruz and I said, which major can I take?
How far were you into the other one then?
I was about a year and a half in.
Already quite a commitment, right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, it was. And that's the thing about choosing what's in alignment. It's not always the easy choice. In fact, I would say it's usually the difficult choice.
Right.
But what's the price that you pay for following through on something that, like, oh, I already started, I've already worked so hard, I've already invested money and time and energy into this. Like, where would I be now if I had kept going?
You seem to be a perfect guest for my last book, although I'm going to give you a copy of it.
Great.
Obviously, I have 3 books this is my 3rd one. I'm going to get you copies of these ones too, if you don't already have them. This one is the last one that is coming out officially, I believe, tomorrow. It's Finding Your Passion.
Yes, this is the one we don't have in our bookshelf at home.
Living the Dream. And that's kind of what I think you're talking about in a way.
Yes.
Of making the choices.
Yeah, because at that point I didn't really know what the passion was. I just knew what it wasn't. And not based on like what it was, but how it made me feel.
But did it come to you quickly that, because all of a sudden you had all that commitment in, and then what you more or less say is that you kind of broke down and say, what am I doing and why and what for?
Yeah.
How then, that brought you to a point that you would have left altogether or said, I'm going to go in a whole different direction, or you had to self-diagnose and kind of help you into a new direction. somehow. How did you?
Yeah.
Because you're not unique in this, right? So
No.
people go through this, and all of a sudden you said, "What am I doing? Where am I going?" Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that stopping and assessing how you want to feel is a huge indicator of the direction that you should go. And when I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling boxed in, I'm feeling inauthentic, I don't want to feel those things. What do I want to be feeling?
Yeah.
I want to feel free, I want to feel creative, I want to feel inspired.
Right.
So I started following those threads.
Right.
Not what should I do, but let me follow those feelings.
Right.
And that's a big thing in creating goals for your life.
Right.
The goals are always changing. You achieve one thing and then okay, it's done. Well, now what? Let me put another goal in the list.
Exactly.
And instead of chasing goals, I think it's important to chase how we want to experience life.
So part of it was you started to say yoga that you started to pursue?
Well, I started doing yoga at the very end of high school when where this all kind of started.
Okay.
This, I call it like a loss of identity.
Okay.
I had this pivotal moment in high school where I kind of lost all of the things that I had placed my identity on. Because when we place our identity on things, on titles, on what we do, we aren't really grounded in who we actually are.
Also such an important part of life, right, for males and females as well, about 18 years old, and as you're trying to, find out who you are really, and then the world can be very demanding around us, and expectations can be very high, either that we put on ourselves or so and becoming confident.
So in that kind of like losing of my ground and my foundation, I was like, I need to find something. It was kind of a moment of desperation, but also a moment of connecting into my intuition.
Right.
I think when the floor falls out from under you, you have no choice but to fall on your knees.
Right.
And I really connected into that intuition. And that intuition was like, go to a yoga class. And I heard it crystal clear, like as if someone was speaking in my ear. And one day I was driving by this yoga studio that I had quickly Googled when I heard that intuitive voice, and then I ignored it, closed the computer. I'm like, whatever.
Right.
I was driving by the yoga studio, and I swear some force of nature took over my body and like pulled me off the highway into the parking lot. And I was in the parking lot of this yoga studio, and I hyperventilated in the car for about 20 minutes before getting the courage to walk in. And it's not that like going into the yoga studio or doing a yoga class for the first time was scary. It was more approaching this next doorway of my life, not knowing what it was going to be.
Right.
And I think that's how my life kind of was. I knew what's the right path? What's the good girl do? What should I be accomplishing? What does success mean to my parents or to society? Let me check those off. I know where I'm going. And when I no longer knew what those pieces were, and honestly no longer cared, then it was all unknown. Where am I going? What am I chasing now? I have no idea.
Right.
So yoga presented that opportunity to really dive into just who am I?
Right.
It wasn't really about the yoga or the movement. It was about actually just being with
Who
myself.
are you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what happened then?
So 2 years after that, after doing yoga just for kind of fun, I did the yoga teacher training, and it really made me confront my purpose, my big why in the world. Purpose to me is not a title or a defined thing. I think we're always expanding, and so purpose is always shifting as well. But something that I feel is really stable that you can rely on is your why in the world. What is that thing that moves you to do absolutely anything in your life. And this
Right.
has a big thing to do with branding, which is what I do now.
Yeah.
Why do we do what we do?
Right.
And so for me, yoga opened my eyes to how important alignment and authenticity were.
Okay.
To me, it was, how can I live my life in alignment with being radically authentic to myself rather than anybody else in my life, any voices external of me. How do I follow what feels true to me right now in this moment?
So what happened to the schooling that you had stopped?
Yes, the schooling. I stopped studying that major. I was studying global economics.
Yeah.
And I applied this concept to it. Okay, what feels authentic to me? What feels aligned to me? And I switched my major to art history and Italian studies.
Oh my God.
Which I think college is pretty interesting because I don't fully believe in it at this point. But for me, it was an opportunity to really dive into learning about something that just kind of lit me up for no reason. There was no payoff to studying art history and the Italian language.
No.
I mean, I can go to Italy and know what I'm looking at and speak Italian to people, but like other than that, I don't have...
Did you learn to speak Italian
I did.
fluently?
It is very rusty at this point, but in college,
it's just like riding bike, right?
Yes.
Once you do it long enough, you can...
Yeah, we went last year and I was like, oh, I'm going to do so bad. But I actually was able to speak quite well, which is good.
It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, so I studied what I would enjoy instead of, oh, it has to have some payoff.
Yeah.
Because being connected to my authenticity, I knew I could trust myself to create something that would work out for me.
So that happened.
Yep.
Then what happened? So how many did you do that for? How long? A couple of years after that?
Yeah, I graduated college with my degree.
So you had
in
a
art
bachelor's
history.
of something?
Yeah, a bachelor's of arts in art history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And?
So I had that. I don't use it at all, and that's totally fine.
But it's a good base, right?
Well, it was fun. To me, it was just fun.
Yeah.
I loved going to class. And when I chose the new major, I literally looked through the course syllabus and went, which major can I take where I won't dread going to a single class? Because if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make it I'm going to make it feed my life.
Did
feed
it
my
give
soul.
a shock to all your friends and your family around
Oh,
you
yeah.
saying, what the are you doing?
I remember calling home to my dad and telling him, I think that I want to be a yoga teacher and I'm going to study art history and learn Italian. I'm going to study abroad in Italy and I'm going to scrap everything I've been working toward up until now. And despite having been like the kind of person who did everything perfectly my whole life, I was always very outgoing and kind of weird and kind of quirky and doing my own thing. Because that's my authentic essence. It's part of me. I can't hide it. I can't ignore it.
That's who you are.
It's just in there. I tried to stuff it into a box, but it didn't work. So my dad knows this about me, and he also trusts me. So he was like, okay. I think it's been a very interesting point in my life that the people who I surround myself with closely, whether it be family or friends, I'll tell them my crazy ideas and my crazy plans, and nobody questions it.
Right.
I'm just like, oh yeah, that's totally you.
Yeah.
Because that's how I've chosen to build my life and live by my values. I'm doing what I'm doing. It's aligned, it's authentic. Here we go.
Yeah.
So people trust.
So your parents still live in?
They live in Sacramento now, which is close to the Bay Area,
Yeah.
and it is quite hot there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And have you got any brothers, sisters, or?
Yeah, I have a younger brother. He's about 3.5 years younger than me.
Okay.
And
What's his name?
His name is RJ, or
RJ.
I mean, technically his name is Ralph.
Okay.
He's Ralph the fourth Ralph in my family.
Okay, yeah, it's good.
We call him RJ though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then from there on in, you now had your degree, your bachelor's in arts in Italian. So what happened then? Because I know now it becomes even more interesting because you
Yes.
want further into
This is the fun part.
other areas.
Yeah, so when I decided to pivot everything, I also had this feeling like I really want to be self-employed. I want to make my own way in life. I don't want to be tied to a desk or tied to a place or tied to other people. I want to create my own thing.
Yeah, entrepreneurial thing.
I always have been. I was the kid selling arts and crafts and lemonade and all of that. So about 3 months or so maybe before I graduated from college, I doubled down on figuring out how to be self-employed.
Okay.
I didn't know who was going to teach me that. I knew I wasn't going to learn it in university.
No.
And by some divine intervention, I would say, a woman named Megan Neely, she came into my life. She actually taught at the yoga studio that I had been teaching at. And she put into a teachers chat on Facebook. She's like, hey, I'm launching this online thing for people who want to start their own business, but they want to do it from a place of alignment. Maybe they're more spiritual. If you know anybody, send this to them. And she put the link in. And I was like, I think there's my answer. So I clicked on the link, I read through it, and I was like, I got to do this.
Yeah.
And at the time I was a student with no job. I knew I wasn't going into a job. I had barely any money to my name. And I was like, I have to make this work.
Yeah.
And called up Megan, figured it out, put all my money toward it, and started down the journey.
And so that created a company then that you then created?
Yeah, so inside of that container, fresh out of college, I was sitting down with Megan and she asked me this question. I think it's a really great question to ask yourself if you're trying to figure out what to do with your life. She said, what do you do where time just passes? You don't even notice it passing because you're so in it. It's so fulfilling. It's so fun. What is that for you?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's graphic design. So I had been in the yearbook class in middle school and high school, and I learned all about graphic design and storytelling, photography, all of the components of what I do today. And I loved it. It was the one thing that was mine growing up that I wasn't told to do by anybody else. It was my thing. And so when she asked that question, I could spend all day doing design. I loved it.
Now, and I'm kind of thinking also in my book a little bit here while we are sitting here, because a lot of stuff that you went through in your life, applies to people that are pursuing the same goals and objectives. Mm-hmm. Some are young, some are middle-aged or students in college potentially, or beyond that. Is saying that if you had, although you had that hobby already at school, graphic design, you were very good at it. The other thing that I found interesting that you said as one is that storytelling was part of that as well. Mm-hmm. Saying, what has that got to do with graphic design? But I like it that you say that because I'm a storyteller.
Yes.
And some people, I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller, and it's part of my life, so, what I like to do. And, so would you agree with me that, that as people that are not overly happy with what they are doing or don't feel fulfilled by it, if there are younger people that are searching for what you know, I talk to a lot of young people, do a lot of presentation. I'm a public professional speaker as well, and especially to young people and entrepreneurial people. You know, I hear over and over and over again, I don't know what to do. If I say, well, where do you go from here? They say, well, I don't know. You know, I'm you know, thinking, you know, I know what I don't want to do. I want to make a lot of money. Okay,
yeah.
Well, you know, okay, there we go. You know, so that I always kind of believe that it is important to find a way as to get counseling in terms of somebody that can kind of, you know, be skilled in the area of kind of through discussion or interviewing, just saying, okay, I think that's where the points are that you likely are very good because it appears that you like it in that direction, and then kind of put together a direction of you know, where to go with careers, right?
Absolutely. I had a similar conundrum on my hands when I was in that moment, because on one hand, I loved teaching yoga, but I didn't feel like I wanted to just be a yoga teacher. I also loved graphic design. I didn't just want to do design. I wanted both.
Right.
And the kind of people that I work with, they're multifaceted, multi-passionate, and they feel like, oh, I can't fit inside of a box.
Right.
There's all of these things I care about, all of these things that light me up, all of these things that I want to do. How do I figure out how to present that to the world?
Right.
And to your point, I think it's so valuable to sit down with people who see you. It doesn't have to be a mentor who's got it all figured out. It could be your best friend.
Yeah.
It could be your parents. It could be a stranger you met on the street who is really grounded and connected with you.
Yeah.
If they can see what lights you up, you take those threads and you tie it into whatever you do. So I sat down with my two things and I go, what's the connecting force between these things? Why do I like these two things?
Right.
Why?
Why?
Why is the central force in everything?
Right.
So the reason that I liked yoga so much was because it helped me really know myself.
Right.
Helped me get deeper.
Right.
I loved the philosophy. I loved getting into the depth of it. It wasn't about the movement.
Right.
When I looked at design, I loved telling the story through design, through the words, through the messaging of the person that I was helping.
Right.
So I looked at those two things. I'm like, oh, it's the same reason why I like both of these things. It's all about knowing yourself deeply and being able to express that in the world.
Right.
In other words, authenticity.
Right.
So for me, everything that I do in my work, and I've been doing this for many years, I've launched courses, I've taken one-on-one clients, I've got my agency, I do design work, I do all kinds of stuff. I've launched podcasts, I've done all kinds of stuff with this central force that ties it all together. Does it create more authenticity in the world? Does it help people see themselves? Because at the end of the day, when I've got deadlines and stresses and people in my inbox and all of the mess that goes along with being an entrepreneur, if I still care about creating authenticity in the world, that's going to bring me through those tough moments.
Authenticity, but describe it to our guests. What it means in your mind.
Authenticity to me is being really connected to who you are and also allowing that to change and shift.
Okay.
I think that a lot of people have an idea of who they are and they kind of stick themselves into that box because it's comfortable. I think true authenticity is allowing yourself to go beyond the box that you're comfortable in.
Right.
Being really true to who you are, what feels good, whether it makes sense or not.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I would see in you, in particular, you good communicator. That's fairly obvious to me. And because that's what I do, so either in written form or in speaking form or podcasting or interacting with people. I love interacting with people. I love to do presentations and keynotes, and then questions and answers, things that I don't know where it will take us, and that's what I love about podcasting, especially the style that I do is usually do it very open. I like individuals in particular that have a sense of self-confidence, which you do, and that are not afraid to interact, on like what we are doing, exploring different areas. And and I think, in particular, I believe the same as you do, that that's something that's very, very important. That I can do that with people, that I have discussions with people and go in areas that they say, yeah, I never had thought about that actually, but yeah, that's kind of where I like to go, but that's where I like to see. I find it unfortunate. That's why I wrote this book.
Yeah.
The finding your passion, living the dream, because how you find your passion, or your passion may find you, whatever it is. That as it was with you, yoga indirectly, and then arts and Italian, but if you put it all together, it created the foundation for you to go forward and then go further from that. And the thing that's still not quite clear to a lot of people that are listening to us and saying, okay, well, I find that all very interesting, but why did she go to BC and to Prince George? That's still not clear to the people.
What a great question.
Why would she go from California to Prince George? Now, to all my guests around the world, Prince George, I always say to all my podcasts, it is the most beautiful place in the world, safe except some other places, but all kidding aside, there's a lot of natural area around us, but tell us about that.
Yeah, so authenticity. I found myself in a leadership training down in San Diego.
On
3 years ago.
Leadership in regards to?
Kind of just like life leadership.
Okay.
Because I think you never have it all figured out. So I had certain pieces.
That's probably a good thing.
It is a good thing because then it keeps you learning.
Exactly.
So I was in this leadership course to really double down on being happy as a person.
Right.
I had business stuff figured out. I was doing well there. I just didn't have like the personal bits all figured out. And I had actually gone through some really not fun stuff in the love department.
Yeah.
It's kind of beaten down in that area.
Yeah.
And one of my really good friends, her name is Anna Starr, she went through this leadership training, and she is like the most glorious, glowing human being you'll ever meet. She like walks in a room and you just feel like she's radiating all over you. She's so amazing. She went through this training and somehow she came out more radiant and more glowing and just lit up from the inside. And that's something I care about. And I saw her create it through going through this course. And she's like, you should go through this leadership training. It's like, I don't know. She's like, no, you're going to go. Like, okay, fine. So I end up in this room and I get paired up with this guy for this exercise. And I'm looking at this person and I'm looking at him. It's totally silent in the room. I'm not allowed to say anything to him. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, I just feel like I know this person. This is so weird. He looks so familiar to me. And then a few days later, I'm looking at him again and I'm like, oh, I know why I know him. My intuition clicked right off and I was like, that's your husband. That's how you know him. I'm like, oh, dang it. There he is. Okay. It was just like this instantaneous knowing. And it sounds totally crazy, but in my life, that's pretty normal. Just having the knowing and going for it, following the thread, seeing what happens. So my husband, Chase, that's who I met in that training. He's from Prince George. He's from BC. I remember asking him.
Why was he there?
That's a great question. He should have answered that when he was on the interview with you.
Yeah, done. Maybe someday I have to bring him back.
Yeah, he was down there. Some of his coworkers and his boss at the time had also taken this training, just like my friend Anastar, and they were like, "You got to go."
Right.
So he was there, I was there, we met, and it's incredible what connections you can make, not only with like my husband, but with friends that I have now who are like family. It's amazing what happens when you meet people in a place of total vulnerability and authenticity.
When was that, Nicolette?
That was in 2020.
Yeah.
At the very start of 2020 in January,
Yeah.
before we knew what was going to happen with the rest of
3.5 years ago,
2020.
so, yeah.
Yeah, so it was really beautiful because in that training, I had all my walls down. I was absolutely vulnerable.
One day training?
No, it was 3 months long.
Oh, 3 months?
3 months.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, it would happen in like segments where we'd go for a weekend, we'd go for like 5 days, but it was spread over 3 months, where you really go in and you don't just like learn some stuff and then like take it into your life and forget about it a month later. It was like, no, we're going to anchor this leadership, leading your life from your own values into you. So over those 3 months, I got to know Chase really well. What was really weird about this training is we weren't actually allowed to date each other until it was over. But I knew and he knew that like pretty much instantaneously, this is my person.
It's falling in love.
Yeah, you can't help.
Yeah.
You can't help it. When you know, you know. They say that. It's super cliche. It makes me want to puke a little, but it is really true.
Yeah. So
this is where the story gets a little crazy because like I said, it was in 2020. So in the middle of this 3 month training, a global pandemic takes over the world.
Yeah.
And Chase is in
COVID-19.
Yeah, Chase is in Canada. I'm in America. The border is shutting down between the two countries. It's all a hot mess. Everybody's freaking out. And Chase and I are finally at the end of this training where we can be in a relationship together.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is what we want. And so now we're like, what are we going to do? We're separated. We literally cannot see each other. We can't cross the border. We're all in lockdown. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And we had a conversation with someone we went through leadership with. His name is Simon. He was like, what are you committed to creating? And Chase and I had this conversation about, well, what are we committed to creating? Are we going to do this relationship like we've done all the relationships in our past? Are we going to like wait around and find out how it goes? Or are we all in?
Yeah.
Because I know this is it. You know this is it. What are we going to create?
Yeah.
So we declared, we're like, okay, when the border opens, we're going to get married. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're committed to creating.
Yeah.
And about a week later, we found a loophole. Canadians were flying into the States and getting through the border despite it being closed. We bought Chase a plane ticket for 2 weeks from that date. We planned a wedding. We planned a wedding in California.
In California.
In somebody's backyard with a very small amount of people.
Yeah.
I had to call up the florist and the photographer and be like, we don't know if this is actually going to happen because we don't know if he's going to make it.
Yeah.
I bought wedding dresses online because everything was closed. It was wild.
Did you still have not the commitment that he could get across?
We had no idea if he was going to get across until the day he crossed.
Yeah.
And so it was a big leap of faith.
Yeah.
But this is something that I've learned. When you follow a leap of faith, when you take a risk that's based not on the reward that you're going to get, but based on like does this feel true to me? I'm going to follow it, whether I'm going to get the reward or I'm going to fall flat on my face. Whatever. If it's true, I'm going to follow it.
I'm familiar with it.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
And so he made it across the border. We called up all the people. We created a wedding. It's a stunning wedding. I've got a video of it on my Instagram if anyone wants to go and stalk our wedding. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And so we got married in the middle of, it was it was May, the end of May. We also got married in a weird virtual ceremony in June during the pandemic, legally married. But it was totally wild. While everyone was canceling their weddings, canceling their plans, waiting for life to happen, Chase and I, we were like, what are we committed to creating? And we're going to actually create it.
Right.
Things move when you are committed to what your vision is, and that's what we created. And so, then we ended up here because he's from here.
That's what happened. So what I'm going to do now, and we'll keep it rolling here. Chase, why don't you come sit here?
Oh, fun!
Since he is here anyway. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. So here we got Chase.
It's Chase! Look, he's here!
Hey, Chase.
Nice
hey,
to
buddy.
see you again. Yeah.
So that's what happened. So he came.
Yes.
And then you had the wedding.
Yes.
Now what happened next is now you had to get back to Canada, right?
Yeah.
What's actually, there's a great part of the story that we're missing.
What are we missing?
So we got ceremoniously married in this really great, little ceremony with our friends.
Yeah, the wedding we wanted. Mm-hmm. And then
we drove a couple of days later to LA County, where you can get married Vegas style, 1 hour wedding.
1 hour weddings, license, it's legal.
I like
go for it.
And so we got married over an iPhone FaceTime video call.
In a parking lot next to an In-N-Out burger.
Oh my God. Eh?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's the way it went.
Yeah, because the border was closed, it was all just, everything was in the unknown.
Yeah.
But they actually had changed the mandate on the border right at the end of June, or the middle of June, saying that if you were immediate family of a Canadian citizen, you could cross.
Okay.
And so it was like, well, good thing we just got married. So it answered our question. We didn't know. We got married not knowing where we were going to live, what we were going to do next. None of it. Yeah. We just knew we're committed to creating this vision of life together.
Yeah.
So we bought me a plane ticket. We got our weird 1 hour wedding marriage license. Took it to the border of Canada.
All signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah, and I got across.
So the key was not for you to get across, or was that a challenge to them?
It was definitely a challenge, yes.
And so did you fly into YVR and?
Yeah, I went from Vancouver right to San Diego, I believe, but there was no telling if I was going to be able to. And then actually the U.S. border agents that were there, they're gruff, they're pretty serious, but
especially at the time.
They were very kind, and for whatever reason, I was just able to fly in. They're like, "What are you doing here?"
And coming back?
Coming back was actually a breeze. We were shocked, but we were very stressed.
Back again into YVR?
Into Vancouver, yeah.
And then you walked by it, gone to the machine, but you...
Well, John, we had a stack of papers ready to show these people.
Wedding cards.
Nobody was interested.
No, they said, "Can we see your passport?" Okay, great, you're good to go. It took 2.5 seconds.
They looked at mine and they were like, "You with that guy?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Okay." Then they let us in.
You said, "Oh my God, can you believe this?"
Yeah.
So.
And then straight into a 2-week quarantine where it was just us in a new country.
Well, that was easy, right? Relatively speaking.
That was fun.
Yeah. But you were still in Vancouver then, or did you come right away to Prince George?
We got to come back to Prince George.
Okay. You had never been in Prince George?
I had never been here.
So you said, "Oh my God, Chase, do we have to go here or not?" What time of year was it?
It was June,
Okay.
So I actually
20. Yeah.
June of 2020,
Okay.
and
It was fairly hot too, right? Was it? Or?
It was
a pretty
beautiful when we got here.
yeah. It was
It was a good
a
summer.
pretty.
Yeah.
It wasn't a smoky summer, so that
Yeah.
was nice. But I remember driving from the airport, and there's just like wildflowers everywhere. And then like coming into town, you see the river, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. And then October hit, and it was snowing, and I didn't even have snow boots yet. I came from California with one carry-on suitcase and no winter clothes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what did I get myself into? It's been honestly a really difficult transition coming to Prince George.
Oh,
I didn't realize
right?
it would be. I'm such a traveler that like when I had the opportunity to move to a new country, I didn't even question it. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
But it has been quite a transition, especially during the pandemic, where it was actually really difficult to meet
For all of
people
us,
and get
right?
involved. Absolutely.
Yeah, so in a way. But now you've been here nearly 2.5 years. You're already well settled in. And so what are you doing now in kind of looking at your resume? You're still very, very busy at things that you're doing. So tell us a little bit about, so you kind of settled in now and... kind of. And, you know, so what are you doing now, or what are you working on now?
So
from a career perspective?
From a career perspective, I'm building brands day in and day out.
Right.
The way that I do that is by really seeing people. Similar to what we're doing right now, I sit down with my clients and I dig deep into, like, why do you care about what you do? What makes you who you are? I want to be able to feel people on like a soul level, an energetic level, similar to the way that when someone walks into a room, you can feel who they are.
Yeah.
They hold a presence, especially the kind of people that I work with who are up to big things. They hold a really specific frequency and resonance.
Yeah.
And so I build brands around that. I help them clarify, what is their message? How do we turn that into visuals? I'm building websites. We're building social media. I'm just, like I said at the beginning, I'm a Renaissance woman. I want to do all of the things with my people.
Yeah.
So I have a agency called the Inner Essence Studio.
Yeah.
Where I work with people globally all over the world to build brands. Even local in Prince George. Like I built these. I built all of the branding for the Wolf's Den Boxing
I think
Club.
you gave me one of those.
Yeah.
So
you own my designs.
Yeah. So what I find interesting about you, Nicolette, you first and foremost a good communicator. I believe you are.
Thank you.
And then obviously you have a good knowledge of interacting with people, which makes you a very good communicator, because that's what I have to do. That's what I do. That's why I write my books. That's why I'm sitting here podcasting. We're probably the most active podcaster certainly in Western Canada, if not in Canada.
It's impressive.
Well, I love it. And the reason that I do is because I do what you do, is I love talking to people, interacting with them. And it's always amazing as to even... I've had discussions with people, and then you say, well, I don't know what to talk about really. And after we speak for a while, it's, everything has changed. And all of a sudden I find out things that they didn't even know really fully well. And
that's the magic.
What makes it so interesting, you know. And I think that's what you do. And so now internationally, again, same as the podcasting, I find it amazing how when I came here in 1965 from Holland, it was a dream to build my own lumber mill.
Yeah.
Reason, I was born November the 1st, 1940. We were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945. And I knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes. And I tried to go when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me. And then I was drafted into the Air Force in Holland. There was still a draft then for 2 years, a little more than 2 years. And then I left when I was 24. and I wanted to build a lumber mill.
Yeah.
And that was my dream, but I wanted to start with nothing. I left Holland with one suitcase, something like you did when you left the United States.
One
to Canada.
suitcase.
I could speak the language. You had a benefit there, obviously.
I did. It's true.
I had 3 books and 1 set of clothes, and then. But what I did have, I had $25.47. And I always have this one here. My employees gave this to me. Actually, I showed this to my guest again. Sue, is the $25.47. That's the amount of money I had in my pocket.
I love that.
I couldn't speak the language, but what I did have, which is the foundation for my life, is attitude. Avoid the negative. I'm a perpetual optimist. Seldom that you would see me being down or negative. I always look at the bright side, and then passion. Obviously, that's my life. If I'm in the lumber business, if I'm writing books or giving presentations or do processing, whatever I do, even at 83, I'm always looking at doing more. And then the other one is obviously work ethic. And
yes,
and usually what I do is I get up, usually in the mornings at about 5:30. I always make my bed, and and then. Before, when I make my bed, I kind of look one time back, and everything is good. My wife is in Victoria, and I'm here during the week, and just in case you wonder where she was then. But
I remember you told Chase on his.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
I was fascinated.
Yeah, and so and then I even with my $25.47, I started as a cleanup man, then a lumber pilot, and then from there. But I always knew I would get my mill.
Yeah.
And then I kind of felt like I had been a failure, because what happened to me, I failed grade 3, and then I failed grade 7 3 times, and then I got a job when I was 14, and I kind of it was kind of difficult because all my friends were going to school, and then they went to college and university, and for me I was a laborer.
Yeah.
And it kind of excluded me a lot of times from them, but I had kind of my own life, and but I had to find if I could do what I thought I could do, and start with nothing here in Canada and build my lumber mill.
Yeah.
And obviously I did that, and but the key part for me likely was that a couple of things. When I had difficulty communicating with people, I was had so much self-confidence, lacked self-confidence really. I couldn't interact with people around my mill, and with about 2 or 3 people, but then by coincidence, through my ex-sister-in-law, actually, she dragged me to Toastmasters, and I was at Toastmasters for 10 years.
Yes.
And that changed my life, no question about it.
I have lots of clients who've been through Toastmasters.
And I became a DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster. It's the highest level in Toastmasters, and it changed my life. And the other thing that changed it for me was that I found a book in a bookstore here, and as I looked at the book, not this one, but in the bookstore, I looked at it, and it was called Driven to Distraction, and it was about ADHD. I had no idea what ADHD was, and I'm going to show it to my guest again here, and I'll get you a copy of this too. I probably gave Chase already copies of it, but I'm going to give you a copy as well. Is that, I had no idea until then, and then that became clear that the difficulty that I had is typical for ADHD, be attention in particular.
Yeah.
And if I sitting in school for 4 years and was not something that came natural to me.
Yeah.
I get easily bored, and on the other hand, I call it superpower. I could not have done what I'm doing now. I'm obviously Toastmasters helped me with public speaking. I'm a professional speaker now and doing podcasts, and obviously, and then but also keynotes all over the place, and has been a big help to me. And then obviously the writing as well, and and even with, although you've been in Holland.
I have not been to Holland.
No,
No.
Have you been in Holland, Chis?
No.
You guys got to go there at some point.
We got to go.
I was born in northern Holland, northeastern Holland, and Holland is relatively small, but it's it's 20 million people. It's a province, little province in Groningen, and they speak a dialect there. The dialect, I grew up speaking dialect. If I speak my dialect, it's difficult for me to interact with somebody that speaks High Dutch. It's distinctly different.
Yeah.
And so I had to then go from having grown up to speak dialect to trying to speak High Dutch, then going to Canada and learning to speak English and writing English in particular.
Yeah.
But I've been here now for nearly 60 years, and
you got 3 books
I
and more on the way.
Must be doing something right.
You're doing something right. It's true.
So so the point that I'm making is that and that's basically what you were talking about, is that I love interacting with other people, and that's why I wrote the other book as well. This one here, Against All Odds, was important. It's basically telling. It's an autobiography. I had never written a book before. It's not easy to write books.
No.
Structurally and for all the obvious reasons. But it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it's not a biography, so it's not, since it was the first one, it has to be right. I couldn't just write it and say, I don't like it, I'll do another one. No, you did one, that's all there is, right?
I hear you.
And so, so that was obviously, it's been very rewarding for me, so I want to write one every year. So the next one that I'm doing is coming out next June, and it is Living Young, Dying Old.
We're going to need that one too.
Yeah, and it's all about not so much age, but quality of life.
Yeah.
So that, that so many people already went in the 40s and 50s and saying, I'm too old for this and I'm too old for that, and then the other one.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, and so what I'm trying to be very careful with my diet. And then obviously I'm quite involved in the gym, trying to stay in shape, and
us too.
Yeah, it's very.
That's a new habit of mine, to also go to the gym. He has no problem doing that.
Yeah, well, obviously it's
Old
part
habit.
of your life. You're a wrestler.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu, but yeah, and boxer.
And boxer, yeah. So is it jiu-jitsu or judo or?
I think that we practice a little bit of each discipline. It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is what it's called, BJJ.
Okay.
But there is a little bit of judo practice that goes handsomely with it, and wrestling as well, of course.
Right. Yeah. So you're going to, you're very competitive as well, right? Because you're going to compete in Kelowna.
Yeah, on Saturday.
And so what are you doing there? What level is it?
So it's jiu-jitsu, and then I'm competing at blue belt, which is the second level of the belting system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And and I get a brown belt of judo. Is your they go up from white to yellow to orange to brown, I believe. I forget.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's five belts, and there's a certain amount of skill level, and then time also that will help you rank up your belts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you're very good at what you're doing. That's for sure.
I hope so. I guess we'll find out, right?
He's committed.
Yeah.
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 So you train quite a bit then in one of the gyms, or?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I train probably too much.
Yeah. So which gym do you go to?
I go to a small gym called Prince George Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
Fantastic place.
Where are they?
It's in the professor's. He has like a shop that's built into a gym.
Okay.
And it's just off of Ospika.
Oh, in that area. Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We've
here.
covered so much ground.
Yeah. So where do you go from here? Obviously, you become very, very involved in the different things that you're doing right now via the internet in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And so where do you go from here in those areas?
Yeah, well, luckily I've been blessed to have created a business that I love, and that gets to keep growing and becoming whatever it wants to be. In addition to that, I got some books in me, and that is something that gets to come out. So recently I've been doing a lot more writing, and I've always loved writing and speaking and all things that involve words, but actually putting the words into a book, that's on the docket.
Okay, talk to us about it, because we're doing that now.
Well, it's fascinating, and it's a great place to be of, well, what do I want this book to be about?
Right.
It's kind of the question of like, what do I want to do with my life? I don't really know. I'm in that place of curiosity rather than judgment. For a long time, it was judgment. Like, why do I not know where I want to go, or why can't I figure this out, or why am I not as happy as I once was? But right now I'm in a place of curiosity and kind of just experiencing life and letting life kind of go through me.
Right.
Financially, my business has that aspect covered.
Okay.
So now it's like, okay, maybe this book is about something completely different. I think you're a really good example of this, of like, oh yeah, well, I know my core values of life, and I'm going to use those to do whatever wants to come through me, whether it's the lumber business, I'm writing 3 books, I'm talking about ADHD, now I'm talking about passion and purpose, now I'm talking about living young. It doesn't matter. I'm doing the podcast. It's not about what is being done or what it's about does it hold those values. So for me, the book's going to have my core values for life in it. I don't know what it's going to be about yet. But
what I feel now is that obviously I had uncertainty about my ability when I failed grade 3 and grade 7. I always knew I could do it.
Yeah.
It took me to Canada to show that to nobody else other than me, and and so that includes the companies that I have and a number of other things. But some of the most rewarding things have been the books, the podcasting, and the speaking on virtually an international level, and it's certainly give me the reward, and then that once I started writing, there is other things I want to do as well in the writing area, and then being more active, obviously, as a podcaster and speaker, and working with young people in particular.
Well, some of the most fulfilling things in life are the things that scare us, that confront our insecurities.
Exactly.
Just like for me, being authentic was not easy.
No.
Because I was used to playing an identity and a role to get approval and love and attention.
Yeah.
Confidence, you were talking about confidence, like that wasn't, or speaking or writing or languages, like that's difficult. But when you show up in the face of the thing that scares you, that you're not super secure about, and you bust through that and create something like a book or build a business, or just like it could be anything. It could be small, it could be big, it doesn't matter. If you bust through that, like it's the most fulfilling thing, and it then opens up the next door of
I agree.
What you're capable of.
Yeah. Nicolette, it was my pleasure to have you.
My pleasure. It was so good.
I'll give you a big hug once we disconnected. Cheers.
Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having you again.
Yes, thank you for
letting me
joining us.
intrude. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.